Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And you know what today is. And if you're wondering about this, I might be a little but you know what? I'm really not. Because in honor of conference championship weekend, this is coming off. And you're about to be surprised. Ready? Three, two, one. Yep. So I've recently moved due to getting out of the military, so that's why it's been so long since I've been on here. But I'm back for a special conference championship weekend, baby. Let's go. So, there's some big games tonight. There's some big games tomorrow. There are some games that don't matter, but there are some games that matter. And when I say matter, I mean college football playoff implications, baby. You see behind my head, I'm not doing my normal or my new ranking system this time because, moving, so I've got to get everything back situated and stuff. But see behind my head the whiteboard, it has different things on it. As you can see, I've got the top 25 conference championship games. I've got the college football playoff rankings as of right now. I've got the top 10. Where's it at? It's over there. Everything. I'll just do this. I got a top 10 right here with their records. I got the top 10 teams that have losses. And then I have my college football playoff, which is basically my prediction after this weekend. Up here, I've got my predicted winner with how many points they win by. So let's jump right into it. I'm just gonna bring this down. Okay, I erased some. That's cool. That's cool. All right, so starting off right here, gonna go with the conference championship games with top 25 teams in them. First off, you've got the Conference USA. Doesn't really matter unless you're Liberty University. Um, you've got New Mexico State versus the 24 ranked Liberty Flames. Liberty is 12-0, looking to complete that perfect season. Um, I think Liberty's going to win that one. Judging by the record of New Mexico State, which is 10-3, comparing to 12-0 Liberty, I feel like I might actually change that because I've got on here Liberty by 21. They're a 10-point favorite, so I don't know if they're going to quite get 21. I'll say Liberty by 13. How about that? That sounds a little bit better. Liberty by 13. Like I said, Liberty is undefeated. New Mexico State is 10-3. From what I've seen, the Flames look great. The Aggies, they look good, but they don't look as good as Liberty does. So we'll say Liberty Flames are your Conference USA champions by 13. I'm going to skip this one and that one. The AAC championship, the American Athletic Conference, is SMU versus the 22nd ranked Tulane Green Wave. Again, this game really don't matter unless you are Tulane or SMU. Um, but for the sake of the playoffs, don't matter. This is basically just a conference champion looking to get a good bowl game after a conference championship win. Um, that one, however, Tulane is a 3-point favorite, so I might actually have to change that one too. I've got Tulane on here winning by 21, but they're just a 3-point favorite. So I'm gonna say they beat SMU by 6. We'll go with that. I would write those down, but I left my marker somewhere else. Don't worry about that. So I'm gonna say Tulane's gonna win by 6. Tulane obviously looks good. They're 11-1 with their only loss coming to stand by. Stand by. Their only loss came back in week 2 against the SEC ranked 20 at the time team of Ole Miss. Everybody else they've won by 20, by 18, 29, 12, 10, 7, 2, 3, 2, 15, right? 16, sorry. And then 13. So later in the season, Tulane's looked a little off kilter, but they've only got one loss. If it wasn't for Ole Miss, they'd be undefeated. So I'm going to say Tulane wins the AAC championship by 6. I'm going to go with this one here, which is the Big 12. Um, this has playoff implications potentially. That's why I've got it in red. If you see, I've got black. Those are the games that don't matter to the playoffs. I've got blue, which there's 4 of those that have direct playoff implications. And then I've got red, who has a potential to be a playoff game or playoff determining game. Potential. But for the Big 12, I've got the 7 ranked Texas Longhorns versus the 18 ranked Oklahoma State. Now, Texas has one loss, and that was to Oklahoma, which I believe was maybe a fluke loss by the Longhorns. To Oklahoma, they lost by 4. Oklahoma was ranked 12th at the time, but I think it was a fluke loss. The better team lost that game. But Oklahoma State, however, has 3 losses. They're 9-3. They've got losses to South Alabama back in week 3. So they started off 2-0 and then lost to USA 33-7. Then they followed that loss up to a loss to Iowa State on the road 34-27. And then they went on a winning streak and then lost to UCF 3 weeks ago 45-3. So their closest loss was Iowa State by 7, and then they have big losses to South Alabama, which is not a good look, and then UCF, which is also it's not a bad look, but it's definitely not a good one. Coming into this game, Texas is a 15-point favorite. I think Texas will cover that spread and win by 2 more points. I think Texas is going to beat Oklahoma State by 17. Texas has been the better team, at least in the Big 12, that I've seen. I mean, better so good that they even beat Alabama by 10, which says a lot. And that one loss that Texas has was by 4 points. So I think Texas is going to go into where are they playing? They're going to go into Arlington. So they're going to have home field advantage on a neutral field, and just they're going to show Oklahoma State what's up, and they're going to win it by 17. Now, we'll go in order of highest rank here, but reverse. So we'll start here. All 4 of these games have a top 4 team, so I'm going to start with the 4th ranked team, which is Florida State, the ACC championship game. It's unfortunate about Florida State's starting quarterback. He had a gruesome injury. Their backup played okay last week against Florida, but he didn't look all that great. Plus, he went down late in the game. So they could potentially be on their 3rd string quarterback for this game. Louisville has 2 losses, I think, right? Louisville has 2 losses. They have a loss to Pitt earlier in the season. They lost that one 38-21. And they lost last week to Kentucky 38-21. Now, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than Well, I was gonna say a lot closer than experts think, but even according to the ESPN app, Florida State is only a 1.5 point favorite. So, with that being said, even though Florida State's ranked fourth and undefeated at 12-0, they don't have their starting quarterback, and they're potentially on their third string quarterback. So, I think Louisville pulls the upset here by 3 on a last second field goal. Um, Florida State looked good without their starter against Florida, but they only won 24-15, and I'm pretty sure one of those touchdowns was late in the game, to seal the game with like a minute left or something. So I think Florida State is playing a better Louisville team now. So I think Louisville comes into Charlotte, North Carolina, and beats the Seminoles by 3 points to win the ACC championship game, which Florida State's number 4 in the playoff, and I think they're going to drop down to 7 because of well, maybe even further than that, because of the fact that they're losing to 14. So I think Louisville will win this one by 3. Number 3 is Washington, the Pac-12 championship game. Now, Washington is 12-0. Oregon is 11-1. Obviously, Washington has won every game, which means they beat Oregon earlier in the season. But listen to this. I'm going to go through a quick rundown of Washington's schedule. Um, they started off they started off 3-0. Like they lost one after week 3. They're 12-0 obviously, so they beat Boise State 56-19. Looked good coming out of the gate. 43-10 to Tulsa. 41-7 to Michigan State. They allowed 32 points to California, but they won it 59-32. They beat Arizona 31-24. Obviously they beat Oregon, but that was only a 3-point win. And then they started kind of looking off because they beat Arizona State 15-7, Stanford 42-33, USC 52-42. They beat Utah 35-28. They beat Oregon State 22-20, and then they beat Washington State 24-21. So their non-con games, phenomenal. Their conference games, not so impressive. They beat California by 27, but they allowed them to score 32 points. They beat USC by 10, but they beat Arizona State by 8, Stanford by 9. Arizona, they're good. I will give them that. They beat them by 7, but Arizona's good. They beat Utah by 7. They beat Oregon State by 2. They beat Washington State by 3. So they're not really that impressive. Their biggest win in conference play was that California win by 27. Now, Oregon, to me, honestly has looked like the better team. Go through their schedule real fast. Obviously, they jumped out from the start. 81-7 over Portland State. Okay. Texas Tech was a little bit closer, 38-30. Not too bad. It's Texas Tech though. They should have probably won that one by more, but it's all right. They beat almost said Oregon. They beat Hawaii 55-10, so they did what they had to do there. They beat Colorado, who I think at this point they were 3-0 going into that game. And everybody was looking at Colorado saying, "Oh my God, there's something great." But then they go into Autzen Stadium in Eugene, Oregon, and Oregon says, "Nah, shh." Actually, if I remember correctly, Dan Lanning, the Oregon head coach, straight up said that the Colorado Buffaloes are clickbait. They're looking for clicks. Meanwhile, we're looking for wins. And after he said that, I'm pretty sure Colorado was like, "Be careful what you wish for, buddy. Well, then Oregon came in and said, "Nah, nah, 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 nah. We are looking for wins." They won that one 42-6. 42-6. And then they traveled to Stanford and did the same thing, 42-6. And then obviously they lost to Washington by 3, 36-33. Um, they beat Washington State by 14. They beat Utah in Utah, 35-6. They beat California 63-19. They beat USC. Granted, this is a closer game than the Washington USC game, but they won that one 36-27, 1 point difference. Um, they beat Arizona State in Tempe 49-13. 49-13. And then they beat Oregon State 31-7. So obviously the better team lost when Oregon and Washington played. I think Oregon lost because of their own mishap. Dan Lanning went for it on 4th down instead of punting it away, gave Washington a short field, and Washington just drove the ball down the field and kicked the game-winning field goal. So Oregon, I think, is going to go into, where is it? Las Vegas? Yeah, they're going to go into Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas with a chip on their shoulder because they don't believe they should have lost to Washington. They're going to go in here. Bo Nix is going to do his thing, secure a Heisman Trophy, and they're going to beat Washington by 14. Right now, Oregon is a 9.5 point favorite, and I'm not just saying this. Actually, they're a 9.5 point favorite. It says it up there at the top, right there. Oregon minus 9.5, and then you come down here and you look at the chances of winning. Look what that says. Oregon has a 75% chance of winning to Washington's 24.2. If that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know what will. So I think Oregon is going to play with a chip on their shoulder. You see, I'm representing the Ducks. They're my second favorite team. I will always pull for Oregon. I love how they play. I've loved them for a long time. They're going to beat Washington by 14 and be your Pac-12 champion. Now, what's that do for the playoffs? You see, Washington's ranked 3rd, Oregon's ranked 5th. So Oregon, they just need one of these top 4 teams to win or to lose. Which, as you remember, I said Louisville was going to beat Florida State. So that knocks them down, moving Oregon up to at least 4. They're going to beat Washington, which would move them up to 3. So already they're looking good for the playoffs. And I do not think that Oregon will be left out of the playoffs as a one-loss Pac-12 champion. I really don't. Even with Florida, if Florida State wins, I think they could potentially jump Oregon over Florida State. I'm talking about the playoff committee. I think they could jump Florida State because they've been the better team all season long. They beat their rival by 14, if that's how it goes. But I think Oregon could possibly jump Florida State. So either way, I feel like they're going to be number 3. Either way. But yeah, so Oregon's going to beat Washington by 14. The next one, the second ranked team. This is no contest, in my opinion. The Big Ten championship game between Michigan and Iowa, I don't believe is going to even be close. Michigan is a 22-point favorite, and I think they're going to cover that and gain some. I think Michigan's going to win this by 30. Their offense has been phenomenal all season. Their defense has been great. Iowa, they've got some offensive issues. Not only that, but they've got defensive issues. If you look at Iowa, hold on, let me pull it up. If you look at Iowa's schedule, biggest win they have was against Western Michigan in week 3. That one was 41-10. Other than that, it's been 24-14, 20-13. They lost 31 to nothing. 26-16 win. 20-14 over Purdue. 15-6 over Wisconsin. They lost to Minnesota 12-10. They beat Northwestern 10-7. They shut out Rutgers 22-0, so that was their second biggest win. They beat Iowa, they beat themselves. They beat Illinois 15-13, and then they beat Nebraska 13-10 on a last-second field goal. I did watch the close of that one. So Michigan looking phenomenal all season, 12-0, 22-point favorite. Will beat Iowa. Where'd they go? By 30. Michigan's going to come in here. They're just going to do their thing, and Iowa's not going to stand a chance. They're not going to stand a chance whatsoever. They're just going to sit there with their thumbs up their butts, I guess, and just be like, well, we tried. Here we are. We made the championship game at least and got our butts kicked. Yep. So you see Michigan's number 2. That's obviously not going to change. If anything, they could potentially jump Georgia. Depending on what... I mean, obviously, it's just going to be a jump to first and then Georgia drops to second. If I don't know, if they just look that impressive. However, the SEC championship game, where's it at? Right here. I think this is where it's going to make a difference. The number 1 Georgia Bulldogs are playing the number 8 Alabama Crimson Tide in Atlanta, Georgia. I know. It's supposed to be a neutral site. It is. Georgia plays in Athens. But they are in Georgia, so either way, it's not really that much of a neutral site. I don't think Alabama can stand up to Georgia. Their offense, I'm talking about Georgia's offense. Their offense is full of weapons. They've got Carson Beck at quarterback, who's pretty decent. They've got, I forgot his first name, but McConkey, I think he's a tight end, who catches pretty much everything. They've got receivers who can run great routes. They can get space. They can turn on the jets when needed. And they got great hands. And they've got Brock Bowers. You can't argue against Brock Bowers. It's hard. Brock Bowers, in my opinion, this may be overrating him. I don't know. It reminds me of either Travis Kelce, George Kittle, or Rob Gronkowski. When Carson Beck throws him the ball, he catches literally everything. He's not the size of those 3 tight ends that I just mentioned, but he has the skill set of all 3 of them, maybe even better. I don't know. So when you see Brock Bowers in the NFL, you're probably going to say, hey, he looks a lot like these other guys. Like the Travis Kelce, the George Kittle, the Rob Gronkowski. Only thing he's missing is a freaking arm brace for no reason. But I don't think Alabama's defense can hold the Georgia offense. Now, the first half of every game that I've watched of Georgia hasn't been that great. You look at South Carolina, they were losing. They were either tied or they were losing to Auburn. Pretty sure Missouri was beating them too. Tennessee wasn't even close. But the second half of all those games, the defense shuts down their opponents and says, nah, the offense will score. Maybe field goals, maybe a touchdown or 2. Maybe they'll just score 1 time in the rest of the second half, but the defense holds. They do their jobs, and they hold their opponents to not being able to win. I think that's what's going to happen to Alabama. They may be back and forth for the first 2 quarters. It might be close at halftime. It might be Alabama's on top at halftime. But I think overall, the second half for the Georgia defense is going to turn on strong, and they're going to beat Alabama by 10. I do believe Georgia is they're only a 5-point favorite, but and according to the matchup predictor here, it's going either way. Georgia is a 52.1% chance of winning, where Alabama has a 47.9. I think it's going to be a bigger finish than experts think. I mean, 5 points is kind of small when you're talking about the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, I know all season long I've said the Georgia Bulldogs haven't looked that impressive. Alabama hasn't looked great at all. I mean, when you look at every game this season, minus maybe 3, so that's 9 games out of the season, they have the most penalties every single game. Middle Tennessee State, they had like 2. Tennessee, they had 1. Yeah, right. They had 1 against Tennessee, and then I think they had another game where it was pretty clean. Um, but Alabama commits a lot of penalties. Now Georgia has quite a bit of issues with ball handling, so interceptions, fumbles. They fumble the ball a lot. They have quite a few interceptions. I mean, if you look at the stats, when you compare Carson Beck to Jalen Milroe, it's really no contest until you get to touchdowns and interceptions. So Beck has thrown it with a completion total of 268 of 30, 370, which is a lot of throws. Milroe has 158 of 238. It's not as much. But Beck has 3,495 yards. Let me say that again. Carson Beck has 3,495 yards. Milroe has 2,526. Now, you may say, but Milroe could pass him. He has way less throws. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's true. But obviously, the running game is better for Alabama. That's where they get their yards. But this is where they're similar. Beck has 22 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. Milroe has 21 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. So, ball control for both teams is wishy-washy. Touchdown passes are up there. I mean, that's pretty great numbers. Um, rushing, I mean, McClellan for Alabama has more yards on more carries, but not by much. Edwards has 147 carries for 781 yards and 11 touchdowns. McClellan has 166 carries, so 20, 19 more runs than Edwards. McClellan has 803 yards. That's 22 more yards than Edwards does. But Edwards has 5 more touchdown runs than McClellan. McClellan only has 6, where Edwards has 11. So I think 5 point favorite for Georgia is a little underwhelming. I think Georgia's going to win this one by 10. It's close, but it's not big. So I think Georgia's going to hold Alabama to whatever they have at halftime, and Georgia's going to score twice, a touchdown and a field goal. That's it. With that being said, Georgia's number 1. I think I've got them still at number 1 after this win because it is against a 8th ranked Alabama. So the committee will probably look at that and be like, "Yeah, that sounds about right." Michigan, however, is number 2. They're playing 16th ranked Iowa, and they're a 22-point favorite. They're going to win that one by 30. And I think the committee will be like, "Yeah, it's Iowa. They covered their spread, but Georgia covered their spread plus more on a higher ranked team." Alabama has 1 loss. Iowa has 3. So already the Alabama win looks better than the Iowa win. See where I'm going with this? So I think after the conference championships are over, it's going to be Georgia at number 1, Michigan at number 2, Oregon at 3. Ohio State will get back in because of all this mayhem of a Florida State loss, a Washington loss. I think Washington's going to drop from 3 to 5 because Oregon they beat Oregon by 3 and then lost to Oregon by 14 if they win by what I predict. Um, and then Florida State will obviously have to drop because they're losing to 14th ranked Louisville, which will move Ohio State, who's 6 right now, to 4. Washington will drop to 5. And you may ask, why would Ohio State jump Washington? Because Washington was undefeated and then lost to Oregon by double digits, where Ohio State has one loss, and it was last week to the number 2 team in the nation, Michigan, by 6. It's hard to argue with that logic. Both teams will be 11-1, or will have one loss. Only difference is Washington will be 12-1, Ohio State will be 11-1. One game difference because obviously with Ohio State's loss, they missed a Big Ten championship game. So they'll look at those losses. Since they were just 1 week apart, it's still comparable. Worst case scenario, Washington drops to 4 because of the fact that they have a win over the number. I don't remember what rank they were back when they played. I don't remember. But because of the win over Oregon earlier in the season, that might help them. But my prediction is they're going to drop to 5. And then Texas will drop or move up to 6 from 7 because they're only beating an 18 ranked team, whereas Florida State lost to a 14, so they'll probably drop to maybe 9. Yeah, maybe 9 because I believe Alabama would. Well, no, Alabama's going to drop down too. So Florida State may drop to 8. They might drop to 8, maybe 7. And then Alabama will probably drop down to shoot 9 or 10. So my college football playoff ranking after conference championship and all that are said and done, the dust settles, the committee gets to work on who's making the playoff, who's not. It's going to be Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, Washington, and Texas. With Georgia playing Ohio State, rematch from last year. Okay, we'll go with that. And then Michigan playing Oregon, with Washington and Texas sitting on the outside looking in, just wishing. Just wishing. Now, the top 10 goes as such: Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State. They're all 12-0. So one team loses, that's going to open the door for these one-loss teams here. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Alabama. All of them are 11-1. With any loss to these guys, that'll definitely open a door for these one loss because then they're all going to be tied. They're going to look at their one loss. Who has the better win? Obviously, with Alabama playing Georgia, if Alabama wins, they'll move up, obviously. If Iowa beats Michigan for whatever reason, obviously Michigan will drop way down. Oregon, if they beat Washington, they'll obviously move up. They'll probably flip flop actually. And Florida State, if they win, then they'll move up to 3 because they're undefeated. Can't put an undefeated team below a one loss team in my brain. But if they lost, they're obviously going to drop down. So Ohio State, Texas, um, I think so. ACC will drop out if Florida State loses. Pac-12 will be in regardless because Washington will either beat Oregon or Oregon will beat Washington. Um, the Big Ten will probably have somebody in. If Iowa wins, Michigan will obviously drop. That'll put Ohio State probably in the top 4. And then the SEC will have somebody in. I don't know how far down Georgia will drop. They'll probably drop to 4 or 5, 3 or 4. I think they're going to be in regardless. Alabama's going to be. They'll probably jump up to 5. But then I don't know about. If Alabama beats Georgia, how far do you think they'll drop? And how far up do you think they'll put Alabama ahead of Georgia? In my eyes, you don't put Alabama below Georgia if Bama wins tomorrow. It's just not feasible. If Georgia drops down to 4, Alabama would be 3, right? If Georgia drops to 5, Alabama will be 4. So I feel like either way, the SEC is going to have Georgia or Alabama in the playoffs. With Texas maybe moving up to, I don't know. I don't know. I think conference champions will obviously have first pickings. So unless you're Big Ten, so it'd be Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. I believe if all these teams lose, but if Georgia wins, it's either going to. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. Between Georgia and Alabama, it's going to be one of those two. Between Oregon and Washington, it's going to be one of those two. Between Michigan and Ohio State, it'll be one of those two. And then it'll either be Texas or Florida State, I think. So it'll be an SEC team, Big Ten team, Pac 12, and then either ACC or Big 12. If Florida State loses, then Texas will make it in. If Florida State wins, then it'll be Florida State. So I may need to change this up. I'm gonna do that. Instead of putting Ohio State at 4, I'm gonna move them up to 5. Texas will go to 4. Washington will drop to 6. Or Washington will drop to 5. Ohio State will stay at 6, and Texas will move up to 5 or to 4. Sorry. That's if all these teams over here do what they do and do what I think will happen. If Texas wins, Oregon wins, both by 14 or more, because Oregon's winning by 14, Texas by 17. Michigan will win by 30, Georgia will win by 10, and Louisville will pull that upset. I think Texas will be 4, Oregon 3, Michigan 2, and Georgia 1. I'm gonna go with that. That's my prediction for the playoff, and that's what I'm gonna stick with. Um, be sure to watch the Oregon Washington Pac-12 championship game, round 2 between these two teams, and I think Bo Nix has got something. I think Bo Nix has something for the Huskies this go around. But I'll see y'all after this weekend. I'm gonna do another video for playoff and my predictions on who's gonna win and all that. For now, I'm signing off. I'll see y'all next time.